Quick introduction before we go into what matters. Again, here's like Open Knowledge Foundation, which I'm representing, but my name is actually Lucas Prateek. I'm the Communications and Advocacy Director at OKFN. Really happy to put this together and to organize this amazing summit. It was a really great panel that we just finished 10 minutes ago. I don't know if you guys were here, but like participation, we are keeping like all these people following us here. It's really great to see the community active and engaged. It's amazing. So really, I'll repeat some information for the ones who were in the first session. Just a few housekeeping notes. So this is a 1 hour and 20 minutes panel where the speakers will do the intervention followed by a conversation with the audience. But we can also talk during the interventions through the chat as it happened in the last session. So maybe we don't have time in the end, so I really encourage you guys to use the chat, and then I'll go as your moderator putting the question to them. For who is following, please keep your microphone muted unless you are requested to speak. And also, I don't think this is necessary, but anyway, this is important. This event follows the Open Knowledge Code of Conduct. So we want to promote a healthy, respectful, and thoughtful conversation between people from different backgrounds. So an aggressive behavior will not be tolerated, and participants may be removed if necessary. So just keep this in mind. The official event hashtag is #TheTechPeopleWant, in case you want to repercute what is being said. And also, of course, please tag OKFN so we can help amplify your post. So this is panel 2. The official title is How to Use AI Without Selling Your Soul or Data. Of course, there's the how-to in the title, which leads to tutorials, but that's not exactly what we will be discussing here. It's more of like an overview of how to get AI in the right or in another or in an alternative way. So this is the description officially. In this panel, we examine how to harness AI's power without compromising ethics, privacy, or human agency. Experts will share practical alternatives to extractive AI models, from privacy-preserving algorithms to open community-governed systems. We will explore real-world cases where AI serves the public good, whether in education, civic tech, journalism, and local governance, without exploiting user data or reinforcing bias. I'm really happy to welcome Cavello, Director of Emerging Technologies at Aspen Digital, Caroline Lindekamp, Head of Product Fact-Checking at Correctiv, Jess, Reia, it's Reia or Reia, I never know. Jess, Reia, Assistant Professor, Department of Data Science at the University of Virginia, my fellow Brazilian. I'm also Brazilian. Great to have you here. And Prateek, Sibal, Inclusive Policy Lab Expert at UNESCO. Really great to have you guys here. As I told you, I'll start with a question that is broad enough, I think, for you guys to include your interventions. You don't need to address that directly, but it's just a trail to keep us around what we want to discuss in this panel. As I told you previously in our email, so ethical AI, when we talk about this responsible ethical, there are like many names that comes attached to AI for good these days, right? These are all great in theory. But how many people actually care enough to choose it over convenience? So that's kind of like the same debate in the previous panel, like the mainstream versus alternative solutions. How can we fight this battle, or should we? So that's it. Like, can we really reform AI, or do we just need to kill the current commercial model and start over? Or is there even a way to do that? How to do it? Like, how to approach AI? Having in mind the tech people want. That's it. Maybe we can start in alphabetical order by surname, if it's okay. But we can also self-organize if someone feels strong to start with that. But if not, I'll just point to B, Cavello from Aspen Digital to start the interventions. You'll all have like around 10 to 15 minutes, and then we can have a chat with the audience in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to go, but anyone really excited to jump in first? Awesome. All right. So I'll get us started here. And I have a question for you. Because I was not able to join the platform earlier. Is it possible for me to present, or shall I just present verbally?
Yes, it is. I will. That's a good point. Thank you. You need to request me because then I can give you rights to do it. So just do right away for you.
Tremendous. Okay, yeah, give me a second here. Thanks.
Take a look
Or
if
if anyone would
you see
like
the
to.
new button there on
I
the
see
bottom.
it now.
There's a new
Okay,
button
thank
now.
you. Give me one
Right?
moment here.
Cool. Go ahead.
Awesome. Fabulous. And here we are. Okay, well, I'm getting an error message, so we won't do that.
Really?
All
Oh,
right.
there's like a button present or something like this, right? And then you can share your
Yes,
where it is, like in your tab or in a different app or your full screen.
Yes. It says error code 1135 could not share screen. So
we are also testing big button, but if you want to send me your presentation, I can try to do it myself. Whatever. If it's not.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I'll just jump in. And if we discover a capability of the future, we'll embrace it. All right.
Okay.
Hi everyone. I'm B. Cavello. I lead the emerging tech team at Aspen Digital. We are a policy program of the Aspen Institute, and I'm really honored to be joining this conversation today about really making sure that technology works for all of us, and trying to figure out how we can make sure that that is the case. My work at the Aspen Institute hinges on a couple of core ideas, and I'm going to share a little bit about how I think about this question. So to start out, I know this may not be a surprise to everyone, but in a lot of the circles that I move in, this is a hot take. Brace yourselves. Hot take. Technology could be good. It could be good. I know that there's a lot of feelings that that might not be the case, but I truly believe that technology could be good. And I know that that is the ethos of the Tech People Want Summit, that technology could be good. But we also recognize that technology on its own is not necessarily going to be good. We need to make it good. We need to decide what good looks like. And we need to shape what that future of technology should look like. I operate in the world of AI policy. I've worked in the AI space for the better part of the last decade. And one of the things that stands out to me is the way that we think about what good technology is. So there's a quote that I find inspiring from Stephen Jay Gould. He says, "I am somehow less interested in the weight and convolutions of Einstein's brain than in the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops." As I move through this world of artificial intelligence and AI policy, I reimagine that quote, thinking I am somehow less interested in building artificial general intelligence than the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops. I believe that technology can be a liberating force. It can be a tool that is empowering to people. And also, I think that as an industry, as a research community, we are occupied with questions that aren't necessarily what I would say is aligned with what good technology looks like. And so as we think about how do we use, or in my case, I would say how to build AI without selling our souls, I would say that we really need to focus on what makes technology good for the world. Now, in my experience at the Aspen Institute, we cover a lot of different things. The Aspen Institute is a large nonprofit organization with many different programs. And in my work at Aspen Digital, we focus on technology and specifically how information ecosystems can empower communities and strengthen democracy, right? How can we use these tools to empower ourselves? And I've been watching a lot of Andor recently. I don't know about you all, but something that really guides my thinking about this work is the belief that no matter how bleak it looks, no matter how big and powerful and monolithic some of the institutions that we may face seem, that there is a rebel in every Death Star. There are people on the inside of every organization trying to steer in the direction of goodness, trying to make things that work for people and work for our planet. And so the real ethos that I bring to this work and our team brings is the idea that we need to make it as easy as possible for those people doing that good work. We need to make it as easy as possible for people to do the right thing. And so the way that I think about these questions around using and building AI without selling our souls is really around thinking about how can we ensure that the people who are building these tools, right? If it's not going to be all of us, we would love to build technologies and systems through public AI models, for instance, that allow everyone to participate in the construction of AI. But even if not everyone is literally hands-on building AI systems, we want to make it as easy as possible for everyone who is building AI to do the right thing, to do things in service of humanity. And so the approach that our team is taking on this work is something called community-aligned AI benchmarks, and I'll drop in there as well, are a little bit of information about how we're coming at this work. Community-aligned AI benchmarks is basically the belief that what's measured gets managed, right? The things that we aspire toward are the things that actually get manifested in our technologies, and that shows up through the way that we measure what good or advanced or impressive AI looks like. And so the approach that we bring to this question is really, how do we define the goals? How do we change the measuring sticks of technology to make sure that the things that we look for in advanced AI are actually the things that we want technology to be capable of doing? Now, we say community-aligned AI benchmarks because building these tools is a very complex process. As you all will know, it involves assembling large amounts of data. It often involves making a lot of adjustments and tweaking our algorithms. And so what we want to understand is what should be the guiding star? What should be the measurement of success, the A+ on the exam of the things that we want to see? Now, this is challenging because most people don't think about AI benchmarks ever. Those are big nerd things to care about, right? They are the language of machine learning researchers, and that's okay. The belief that we have with community-aligned AI benchmarks is that everyone can play a role in shaping what those measuring sticks, what those exams, what those benchmarks could be. And so the process that we've been undertaking to try to steer toward building AI without selling our souls is really one of trying to involve people in a community conversation around what we want the world to look like. Now, I specifically say what we want the world to look like, not what we want AI to look like or what we want technology to look like. I think that too often we come at these questions starting with the technology solution, starting with the new shiny thing that we've got, like AI, which is great. We love those things. But if we keep approaching these questions of what do people want, leading with the technology, then we risk a situation where we're focusing more on building for the world that is easy for the tech rather than is what people actually want to see. So the challenge that I'll leave you all here with as part of the Tech People Want Summit is to really interrogate this question, not of what technology we want, but what worlds we want, what capabilities we want, what solutions and outcomes we want, and begin to articulate those challenges in terms of technology, in terms of machine learning benchmarks, in terms of tests that we could run our software against. But ultimately, I think technology can be good. Technology could be good. Technology, I hope, will be good. But we have to make it, and we have to involve all of us in that conversation of doing so.
Thank you very much. Well, two great provocations. Technology should be good, could be good, and the word people want. Thank you very much for your first talk and really positioning everything like for this panel. Let's go now with Caro, I think, if it's okay. Caro is from Correctiv, so I'm really looking forward to know her perspective on journalism and journalism tools using AI or ethical or responsible or to the word people want. Go ahead, Caro.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that great first keynote. So I jumped in quite last minute, and I hope to provide you our perspective on it. And it's specifically, I mean, I have an editorial background. I'm a journalist by training, and I joined Correctiv a bit more than 3 years ago, and I joined our fact-checking unit, particularly to build the project that is today called Fact and Forum. So I will particularly look at not only at journalism, but also how it is important in fact-checking, actually. And to be honest, when you talk about AI and disinformation, probably the first thing that comes to mind for most of us are deepfakes. I mean, deepfakes are the topic to discuss about, and it's in the media. It has been widely cited, like the alleged impacts of deepfakes on the elections we had all around the world last year. But now, like our inside perspective from a fact-checking newsroom, or for my colleagues from the fact-checking newsroom, it's actually, to be honest, I'm more often invited on panels to talk about deepfakes than deepfakes to actually pop up in our monitoring. So this is not to underestimate the risk of generative AI for the whole information disorder, but it's just like as an intro to what I'd like to bring to this discussion, just like a reduction, maybe a nutshell of what is actually a very complex topic, because I think what it exemplifies is a bit what it's a common quote. I first heard it from Charlie Beckett in the context of the Journalism AI Fellowship a couple of years ago. It is, we tend to overestimate the effects of any technology in the short run, and in the negative thing, I think this is what's happening in the public debates on deepfake at the moment, but we underestimate technology in the long run. And then when you talk about over or underestimating technology, I mean, this can go in both directions. So this can be when we look at the negative impacts of, maybe let's call it, according to our panel title, unethical application of technology, but it can also be under or overestimated when it comes to how can we actually exploit technology for our own needs in an ethical way. So, and for me, maybe the fellowship was actually a great delve into journalism and AI, just as its title is stated. So talking about AI, my coffee machine is doing something in the background. I don't know if it's noisy or if the AI filter is actually working. I know it works very well on Zoom. I don't know what it's like for the open source solution with Big Blue Button. Anyways, so yes. But so talking about AI and journalism, so I'm someone with a totally editorial background, and then I joined a team where we were supposed to build a platform and implement AI tools. And to be honest, like the first discussions I had with the researchers we worked together with, they are from the field of natural language processing and signal processing. And then our developers, I was sitting with a list and I made a vocabulary list so that I can get through the calls. So now I'm 3 years in the project, and what have I gotten from working in such an interdisciplinary team? Actually, I did get a lot of it, and I think the first thing is I would advise, or I would suggest to every newsroom to get into technology, because I think only when preparing your data and preparing your processes for AI application is already a great benefit. Because just when you talk to developers, for instance, and you want to streamline your work process, for instance, on a platform, it really helps you to reflect on your work and to structure data sets to make your processes easier, to reflect on every useless copy-paste process you have in your team. So just doing all the pre-work done, and I know I see some of you laughing, so maybe you have been in the same experience when you said like, well, we have a lot of data, isn't that awesome? And then you try to structure your data set and you see what a mess it actually is. So, but already to just do this work, even in the end, if you decide to not go for a certain tool, this is already, I think, a great benefit for your work. But of course, we shouldn't stop there. And then what you have to do, especially since we've been working together with researchers to build our project, it was not only about applying already existing and rather convenient AI tools, but it was really also to get into machine learning and work together on the development of AI applications together with our research partners. Here must say also, now looking back at that consortium, we underestimated the challenges that came with it, to be honest. And looking at it now, because with the whole hype that is around AI at the moment, it is also a hype in the funding world, and fact-checking also relies on funding. And we sometimes do AI for the sake of AI. And if we get money out of it, fair enough. But this is, in general, this is a trend that I do not at all like. And I don't like talking about AI exclusively. So at Correctiv, we follow a civic tech approach, and we have been growing our civic tech team over the past 3 years. Will Franklin is the head of our tech team and who is guiding everything and laying out our strategy in this field. And I'm working in one of our tech projects, which is the Faktenforum, and we have 2 more important projects in that area at Correctiv, which is the Crowd Newsroom and BAB, our community platform. And what we like to say is, instead of saying, well, we want to implement AI, we look at a problem. So we try to identify a problem, and then we look at possible solutions and always take technology into account as a way to solve such a problem. So this can be AI, but maybe it doesn't have to be artificial intelligence. Maybe there's an easier solution that could also provide to solving our problem. And so what we do specifically in Correctiv Faktenforum is actually exactly this. We set up to have environment to bring together citizen fact checkers and AI-based assistant tools. We do have the citizen fact checkers now, and to be honest, we do not really have AI-based assistant tools that help them. However, it has been a great benefit, and we now have a platform where we can onboard citizen fact checkers and get them involved into the whole fact checking process through our platform. And we have the ability to implement AI-based assistant tools. And why should we do this? I think what we have, working together with citizen journalists, we can give AI a totally different meaning, because it is not only, it can have a different meaning in a citizen project than it does have in a professional newsroom. Because then the idea is not only actually how can we make our work processes more efficient, which is one of the key reasons of implementing AI in regular newsrooms, but we can also look at how can we provide low threshold access to journalistic processes and motivate people, maybe also with some limited gamification elements, to join in our project. And third, also to increase AI literacy, because today, when you want to effectively counter misinformation and disinformation, you think about increasing media and information literacy in society. But AI does have played such an important role in the information disorder that you can't say media literacy without thinking AI literacy as well. And instead of just saying, everyone is using ChatGPT, but we all know it's a black box. And what we could do, for example, to bring even smaller tools in application, but implement them in a transparent way. And we have done this, for example, with a tool called Wolf Schneider KI. So it's Wolf Schneider AI, and it's pretty much just an editing tool. So you feed your text into the tool, and we're working with GPT, and it then makes suggestions on how you can transform the text. But it's not giving you the definite answer, this is a new version of your text, but it makes suggestions and it provides you with feedback. And next to the tool, we always post tutorials where we explain how does AI work, what does AI actually mean, what's the difference between machine learning and deep learning, to really also contribute to AI literacy. Because what I think is very important is also that we provide an understanding of the technology. And I hate these panels where they say, so is AI good or bad? So because with this, we overestimate the technology. We give it kind of a godlike feeling. It's okay, it's something that we cannot impact. And I think what is one of the most important learnings that we can transfer, when we talk about AI literacy, is actually that people understand that it's only a tool and that there are people behind it who are responsible. And this is also why I would advocate for having AI projects within newsrooms, also to provide a better understanding of how technology works among your colleagues. Because as journalists, we are not only implementing and using technology, but we are also the ones reporting about technology and providing an understanding for everything that is related to the topic in public. And to be honest, there's a lot of bad reporting on AI out there. And then maybe one final aspect, which is very important also for fact-checking. I mean, fact-checking, you all might know the announcement from Mark Zuckerberg early this year when he turned his back on fact-checking in the US. This is also linked to the fact-checking world. I'm not specifically talking about Correctiv, but really just the fact-checking community international level. It is also a question like how can we finance fact-checking, and also to safeguard our data, and also to see like which data do we allow big tech to scrape from our website. It's also a question of how can we actually generate revenue from our data ourselves, and how can we protect our data. So this is also then an important aspect to report on, and also what we've seen with Facebook early this year has been happening like a bit more silently now from the side of Google, who have announced like 2 or 3 weeks ago to step back from claim review. I don't know if this is like a data format that is familiar to everyone here, but it's pretty much we feed information on our fact check into that database, which has been used by Google also to promote fact checking content in their search engine, and Google will stop using it and stop investing in that technology, which is like negative on several sides because it shows very much the direction where big tech is going, and even more forces us to reflect on where do we want to collaborate and what are we reporting on. But also like the database that we are talking on has also been like the groundwork for many AI projects or machine learning projects in the field of fact checking. So what I would say, be very open to the technology, but be critical, especially to the big organizations behind it.
Well, thank you very much, Caro. With all the things that are happening in the chat and you speaking, is like, oh gosh, so many things to organize in our brains. Thanks for mentioning the funding component. I think we'll talk about it later in the session because it's something I want to address. But also thanks for giving me a good hook to pass the floor to Jess when you talked about we need to decide like how we need to like the licenses and stuff, how AI components or tools are digging into our data and with what purpose and under what licenses and policies and stuff. And this is exactly where Jess is an expert of data governance and so on. So I'll give the floor to you, Jess. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you so much for the invitation, for having me. I'm learning a lot here, and I hope I can contribute to this discussion a little bit. And I love the question in the chat just now about like, but what is AI? And I think the ambiguity of the term is like, it's on purpose sometimes, and it kind of like fits into some of the dynamics that I want to like quickly explore here. And so, you know, I'm a policymaker by training, and I work in higher education currently in the United States, which is very interesting. And I want to maybe approach like this idea of, is ethical AI even a possibility within our planetary boundaries right now? With 3 brief comments, one about data and data governance, the second about infrastructure, and I went with like education because that's like, I think it's good to wrap up there in like future paths for that. And I think data is important, and I usually start like my course on data and AI ethics with data collection because AI is used, like AI is trained in data sets. So data sets are a huge part of this, and sometimes I feel like a little bit overlooked on how like the power and how political they are. So the stories that are told by the data sets, they matter as much or almost as much as the hidden stories over there. And as my colleagues just mentioned, like having more data is not necessarily good or safe or like ideal. And so several issues of bias and fairness and misrepresentation as well, they emerge in data sets. They're part of the problem, not the only problem. And I feel like that's why synthetic data and the promise of synthetic data solving like privacy problems, we need to look very carefully at that. Could help, but like it's not the biggest solution we could find in there. And I think at this very moment in the world, it's very important to think that data sets that are also political. That's why like some data sets are disappearing, being erased by the government somewhere in different places. And so all like this kind of considered controversial topics, from climate justice to gender identity or health, for example, like if they're disappearing or if they are not used to train AI, and lots of people and communities, they're not counted. And that's like one of the things that I like to explore in my work, like who is not being counted and why. And we can give many examples from like gender diverse communities. Only like 1 or 2 countries, like Canada is considered the first country to ask questions about gender identity in their census, and this was 2022. And like Scotland and other countries, they've been considering, but these are really controversial and contentious topics. And so you have like entire segments of the population who are not even visible in data sets. You know, how can we expect AI to be like fair and properly represent and have those communities like factor into the equation and the systems that use? And you can say the same for like data workers and housing communities and sex workers and like so many other communities that are not part of official numbers, or data sets are not available, or we should even consider if having them visible in data sets is a good idea or not, for all sorts of like the politics that I just mentioned as well. So like this, like the trade-offs of visibility are very important. And I think like one interesting solution, and I know like it's receiving more and more attention lately, it sits in generated data and community-based data collection. So like trying to fill out the gaps left by like official data collection. And there are like a few examples that I really like in case you want to explore more, like the Data Lab in Brazil, like based in the Maré favela. And they are offering like training on citizen data generation in rural favelas and the outskirts of the city. So these kinds of projects and the training and this kind of like value being put towards like more citizen generated data, something that the trans survey in the US also does. Like if you're not being counted and visible as data points, like we count ourselves. And this like has become one of the main topics at the intergovernmental level as well, with the United Nations World Data Forum, for example, in the principle of leave no one behind, one of the sustainable development goals, like these connections that everyone should be like visible and part of this. So allegedly AI would reflect more how like diverse the humanity is in a certain way. And then moving like quickly to like issues of infrastructure, and I feel like they're all connected. And at this moment, like we are finally talking more openly about all the issues about like environmental justice and the impact of AI. And I think it's really, really hard to talk about ethics and not consider the kind of like environmental impact of all this, from energy, water, and land to mineral sovereignty as well, especially in the global south, and all the e-waste and this kind of privatization of digital public infrastructure that cause data sovereignty issues as well. And I think like we are seeing right now countries like Chile and Brazil making some really poor choices in terms of data center policies and sovereignty in this case. And this will play out really like badly over the next couple of years as well. And like I work mostly in Virginia, considered like one of the largest hubs. And like bringing this kind of discussion into our discussions of data ethics is very important, and I'm glad that like we see more and more of that. And I think like investigative journalism has played like a crucial role in helping like raise this issue and bring this conversation to the public as well, because beyond talking about privacy issues and fairness and bias, which are very, very important as well, I think like bringing issues of environmental justice and like whose communities are going to be impacted by this kind of like massive adoption of AI and like pushing AI on like all sorts of systems and platforms and technologies that we use right now. And I think like the EU has an interesting response to the privatization with publicly funded and owned infrastructure, from data centers to high performance computing, like Leonardo in Bologna. Is that the best answer? We don't know, but it's interesting to see like we are approaching digital public infrastructures like differently in a certain way. And I think like the regional coalitions like in South America for mineral sovereignty that also can help us think about like AI and how ethical AI can be. And I will share 2 resources later in the chat, so I don't use much of our time. Like if we could reimagine those systems for like environmental justice, how would like AI be more ethical and accommodate more of the needs that we have? And the last perspective, the third one about education, and that's like from our experience, like in a School of Data Science, claim it to be the first one in the United States. And you'd be impressed in terms of curriculum, how many programs and degrees do not even teach any kind of ethics or any kind of like social impacts of whatever kind of work you are doing with big data and AI. And even though like we try to do, and we do this by making the courses required, which is interesting because sometimes the students are excited, but most of them are just like eye rolling and say, why should I be here? Like, why do I need to go through this boring ethics conversation in classroom? And I think like one of the most gratifying things is like months later, they say, oh, I changed my mind. Not all of them, though. Like most of them, they're just like, I changed my mind. And like bringing these conversations we're having here to the classroom is very, very, very important because, for example, my students, they're really close to industry, like in terms of career perspectives and funding and everything, but also showing them like all this kind of the advocacy, the policies, the like data journalists, like putting them in touch with real world examples of ethics in practice and how important it is to so many different communities. That's very, very important. And I think like we still need to do that better because we are kind of helping to shape current and future data science in a way who will develop all these AI models. And AI ethics sometimes is just something that we check, but like how can we make this meaningful and what should be part of this curriculum, like looking at global perspectives, especially in the US, that tends to be a little bit like more self-centered and showing that AI has no borders, but the power of AI does have very specific borders and dynamics of interaction. And this literacy that my colleagues here already mentioned as well should not be like an individual burden, but collectively built. And I think the students, they play like a huge role because a few years ago, we didn't have like data science as a degree or a program, and now we do. And this is like one tiny bit, but I was like thinking about how we talk about AI matters, because yeah, we give all this power that AI can be like the solution to save us all, or like how we report and then how we teach about AI. It's very important as well, especially trying to build these bridges between the more like technical computational fields and experiences with like the social control economic impact that AI has. And so like thinking about these 3 areas more or less can help us is like a little like starting point, little step to think about like this possibility of having AI more ethical. And I'm a non-pessimist, so take those things with a grain of salt, but because of my students, I've been forced to like more and more to think about hope, like can we be hopeful, can we make a better world? And I always say yes, and like we are all part of this process, and that's why again, like I think the educational research, pedagogical reporting aspects of this are very, very important. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jess. So there's definitely a note for myself. I need to start giving classes to be more hopeful. But thank you very much for how you finished your talk and how you frame it. It was really cool. Let's dig deeper into some of those things in a minute during the discussion. Just when I give the floor to Prateek, as we're talking about education, also I think it's a good hook. Thank you guys for helping me moderate this. He's a policy expert at UNESCO, coming from the digital transformation side, and we'll talk more about like AI, public sector, and all this. Looking forward to you, Prateek.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Lucas. Actually, when I saw the title, it was Inclusive Policy Lab, and I was like, actually, I'm program specialist at UNESCO, but that doesn't matter. Just when I saw the prompt, I thought let's probably start with unpacking the prompt itself. So you said ethical AI sounds great in theory. So I was like, what is the theory that we are talking about? Maybe I'll touch on that a bit. But how many people actually care enough to choose it over convenience? I think there's something there about convenience. We are all a bit kind of creatures of convenience. How many times have we selected accept all or just never bothered to read the cookie policy and so on, the privacy policies and so on? Then can we really reform AI? Do we need to, or do we need to kill the current corporate commercial model and start over? I mean, I see a lot of activisty angst in that. I would be happy to unpack a little bit this part as well. So I would really kind of structure my thoughts in three parts. First is, what do we mean by ethical AI and theory? Uh, to me, I mean, I really understand it as the good part about coming after all the speakers is that I can also reflect, building on what they said. So the good, bad, ugly of technology, what is it? I think we need to move beyond the narrative of AI for good or AI is bad. We need to be a bit more nuanced, and this kind of ethical, philosophical understanding of AI helps us do that. So from science and technology studies, we've seen that there are three ways, more or less, that you can think about technology. One is in a more instrumental way, that which is exactly this AI for good, that this will lead to XYZ outcome. For instance, you think about let's take a gun, and it is an instrument, it is a tool for violence and so on. Then there's a deterministic view of technology, right? That technology is there and it will just shape our outcomes. So it's no longer just an instrument. It's if you, I don't know why I'm sticking with all these violent examples, but if you take a knife, you can decide to choose it to cut an apple or to kill someone. It's something not dependent on the tool, but it determines what you can do. So it determines our actions. And the third way of looking at technology is really like technology as a mediator. And I think this describes reality a bit better, where technology really mediates our actions at two levels, at a micro level and a macro level. And I'll talk about that a bit. But when I talk about technology as a mediator, it would really mean, for instance, think about a speed breaker. Uh, it is a very simple piece of technology that forces us to slow down, right? Someone has put it on the streets, whether it's a school crossing or wherever, and it forces us to slow down. So the designers of this technology basically embedded it with a script. They said this technology is supposed to slow people down for XYZ reason. When we are talking about AI systems, we also need to think about what kind of scripts we are embedding these systems with. And when we talk about ethics, it's important to define those principles. So over the past many years, we've had so many of these national, regional, global, including, of course, the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI, which outline what are the principles that we should align ourselves with when we talk about governing technology. And when it comes to developers of these technologies, whether you are actually someone who's coding and is a tech developer, or someone who's commissioning these kind of tools and so on, we need to think about what kind of values you are embedding in technology. And this is what we mean by doing ethics of AI. Like, what is it in theory? You embed it with some values which make us influence our actions at a micro level. So as I said, for instance, the speed breaker, but another example would be at some airports, you would have seen there are coin slot machines, right? There are trolleys where you have to insert a coin and then you get the trolley. This small slot of coin is really telling us that you can only get it by inserting a coin. This is someone who thought about this, embedded a script in just that design, right? Similarly, when you have social media algorithms, Caroline was talking about deep fakes and so on. A lot of these algorithms are really make us click more and stay on the platform more. This is a choice that people are making. Then you have other privacy protecting platforms like Mozilla and so on, which made a choice to say that we will be privacy protecting first. So this is an ethical choice in action. So it's no longer just theory, but it's important to sometimes understand what is the theory behind it, because we just end up criticizing, this is theoretical, it makes no sense. But there is a reason why it feeds into what action is at a macro level. So sometimes we don't also consciously realize how technology is influencing our norms. So all of us have some kinds of norms in the societies, different cultures that we are operating in. And these norms are also changing with technology. So imagine you are in a classroom, and I'm assuming that all of us are in a generation where there were no kind of robotic teaching assistants in classes, right? We just had our teachers. And now if you have a teaching assistant, which is a robot, which is also helping students with their learning and their tasks, our whole conception of what is a teacher would change, would evolve. I don't know in which direction, but it would evolve, that whole dynamic. So this is technology influencing our norms at a macro level, something that we're not even noticing. So we need to be conscious about when we are designing technologies, whether it's AI or anything else, what kind of norms we are embedding in it, what kind of mediations it will produce, both in a micro level and at a macro level when we are developing these technologies. So this to me is what I understand, and there's this whole work by Professor Peter Paul Verbeek, but also before by Bruno Latour. All these philosophers have really talked about mediation theory and embeddedness of ethics in technology and so on. So I just wanted to unpack a little bit this part of what is AI ethics in theory, and is it great? I think it is great to have some of that theory. The second part that I wanted to quickly unpack was really this idea of convenience. I think here again, we should not just say that if something is convenient, it is bad, but rather actually see how can we make things convenient for people. Because if it's again a design choice that you're making, right? Reading these privacy policies is not convenient. And hence we just skip over them. And I think many years ago, there was an article or some study which said that it would take you 77 days or so if I were to read all the privacy policies that I encounter in my annual cycle of browsing through the internet. I mean, it's ridiculous. So this consent and notice model is not really working, but we still have it there. So we need to think about how to make use of technology more convenient, and not only just think of it as a dichotomy between convenience and something ethical. I don't know why. Why should something ethical not be convenient? It can be if we think about how to build it that way. Uh, the last part was really about reforming AI and whether we should burn the current system down, is how I'm reading it, right? And I think again here, epistemic communities around AI have taken years to develop, and there is something to how they have evolved over the few years. I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago, and we were talking about how in around 2018 or so, when I started working in this domain, and there was already so much going on for sure, I noticed that a lot of the discussion was really focusing on what are the challenges of data-driven biases, transparency, black box, and then coming up with principles, whether there is the city of Montreal, which is putting out its own principles, or it's a private sector company, or it's a civil society organization, or it's a country or supranational institution. So we spent, I think, from 2018 to 2020, 21, 22, a lot of time building these principles, and this really helps because we with smaller communities, different kinds of initiative, we started to converge about what kind of AI do we want, what is the ethics of AI that we want. We have that now, more or less. It can change, it can evolve, of course, but what we are seeing now is that beyond these broader discussions around principles, they have so many epistemic communities emerged on specific things, right? So B was before talking about some kind of work that they are doing on community-driven AI and so on, and how the community is involved in these processes. There's a lot of work around audits, and there are whole certification mechanisms. There are these groups of people who will help you do the audits. There are frameworks on how to do audits. So I don't think that things can be burnt down in a day and then expect something new to emerge just like that. because what has emerged after a lot of discussion, debate, punching between different groups, and come to the realization of more specificity. For me, for instance, I work on a lot on AI in the judiciary, and over the years we have seen our program evolve from talking to about broader principles to now we are talking about, okay, so how does independence of judiciary intersect with AI, or how can you actually in the judiciary do an ethical impact assessment, or what is it that judges really need to know when they are being trained about AI and when they take decisions, or do you have any guidelines on how they use ChatGPT or not? And alarmingly, about we did a survey within our network of judges around the world. 44% of them, and this was data from 96 countries, said that they're using some form of AI tool, and only 9% had received some guidance. And talking to judges around the world, I've seen like some who are really running forward and using any kind of commercially available AI system, and which is fine, but there are some risks associated with that, of course. And risks of, for instance, there was this judge in Colombia who used ChatGPT to decide whether a child having should get some form of disability benefits or not. I mean, you can't outsource these kind of thinking to an AI system, right? Then there are others who are like, oh, I will not touch it at all. We don't know. So a middle ground is like, well, you should have some kind of guidelines for those who are really racing ahead so that they can understand it better and use it in a more human rights aligned manner. And those who are not using it at all should be actually encouraged to use it with some guidance so that they use it correctly. So because there are some benefits of using it. So I think we have reached a point where there are many rabbit holes, there are many communities working on specific issues, and I think that is a great thing. I don't think we need to start over. I think we need to dive deeper. We need to cross-link between these different communities, and we need to inform each other's debates. So my 2 cents on I'm just unpacking your question, and I'll stop here. Yeah.
Amazing, Prateek. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so I don't know how to start with now. I have many questions in my head, but also there are tons of discussions happening in the chat. Maybe I'll do different this time. Maybe I'll give the floor for you guys to ask yourselves questions, if you have any. I feel that there are probably questions in your head because you've been discussing the chat already. So maybe, yeah, that's it. Like open space for you guys to chat, and then I come with my questions and also scraping the chat to see if there's anything that we can take. I don't know, someone who wants to start.
I had just dropped this in the chat, so I'll go ahead. I mean, inspired by what Prateek was just saying about people having a more sophisticated way of evaluating whether a tool is appropriate. I was wondering if Caro might be able to speak a little bit, talking about how journalists are using these tools or evaluating whether these tools, if you can share at all about any of the best practices that exist, or if there's resources that you'd point people to of like, how can people know if something is going to be an appropriate tool for journalistic use?
I think the easy answer is if you know the tool, if you're able of understanding the tool. I think this is something you can use, because I mean the situation what we have as journalists, because I mean the question is also about like ethical AI, and I think for us as journalists it's just a question of how can we uphold our long existing ethics in an ever-changing context like where technology is having a big impact. And what is important for us as journalists is actually the traceability of our work, the transparency, and to work accountable. So this means whenever someone's coming like a year after is coming back and asking me, why did you write this in your article? I need to be able to justify myself. And if this is like some hallucinated content that has been produced through an LLM, of course, I won't be able to do this. And maybe I'm lucky and it's right somehow, but maybe I'm unlucky. And I mean, our biggest currency, or the most important currency we have, is our credibility. And so this is like, I mean, the typical human in the loop approach, like the final decision in the newsroom has and always has to be with us. Like, and when it comes to using AI on the way we have, like within Correctiv, we have defined guidelines on how we are allowed to use AI. And we also had, like, when we discussed these guidelines, there were also some who have been very critical and were like, okay, let's make it easy. Let's not use AI at all. But of course, I mean, this is not even possible, because it's even, you know, for example, we're using Trint, for instance. So whenever we have like an interview, and all the transcription work that we have done like a few years ago can now be automated. And this is like such an, like, comparably by today's standards, like such an easy tool, but it helps us so much. But then on the contrary, for example, how can we use ChatGPT? And what is very important to us, for instance, like when our investigative newsroom is working on a critical research, that we do not feed any confidential information into the tool, because we don't know what is happening with the tool. So these are some, just a couple of examples that we've given to ourselves. But generally, I think it's good to find like kind of a middle ground, to say, like, at the one hand, we are open to using tools wherever we can use them according to our standards. And then at the same time, to be very critical of not using tools, even if they might be convenient, when we cannot control them. Yeah, and what is with the tool that is self-hosted? Like, I mean, at the moment we don't host like a language model, for instance. But of course, I mean, it's the same what you have even now. I mean, we are on Big Blue Button now. We're also using at Correctiv. We're using Big Blue Button besides Zoom, and this is, I mean, one of the decisions that we have made. And it was definitely, I can tell you, I'm definitely part of the lazy cohort that tends to go with a convenient bit. But it's exactly that, because I mean, if we have like a I don't know, if I do like a public workshop, for instance, so maybe there are no secret information shared, but if I do like a confidential interview on like in a video call, then definitely Big Blue Button, like what we're hosting ourselves, is a better way to go. Or we have the same, for instance, when it comes to organizing events. But also, I mean, we all have to keep in mind, we are also a civil society organization, and you also have to have the resources actually to build and also to maintain these implementations.
Yeah, let me jump in and try to tie some of those things together in a question. We saw that happening with the web, with the internet in general, right? Like, we had this like idealistic model in the beginning, like, you know, everything is open, global, universal. We have all the freedom and nodes of the network that could connect with each other, blah blah blah. And then the things evolved in a way that today we kind of like have national internet, right? Like, depending where you are, your experience with the network is very different. I see somehow this happening with the AI discourse, right? Like, oh, these big commercial ones who started the race. So what AI do you use, right? Like, someone asked it in the chat, but like, this is something we have with our colleagues, right? Like, oh, I'm using this, I'm using that one. So like, picking from like the catalog, let's say, that's like the commercial side is there. But organizations like us, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Open Knowledge Foundation now, we are also integrating AI, like trying to, in a different way, privacy preserving, local, you know, happens in your computer, not in the cloud. All these things that we are trying to do. Isn't it also like the same thing that is happening with the internet? Like, you know, there's a power in the connection of the, let's say, the internet idea. That we are doing this in our small communities. It's good that this is decentralized, but at the same time, there's no you know, one model, or doesn't need to be one model. I mean, it doesn't mean like, you know, one size fits all. It's not at all. But there's no like, you know, broader thing that we can just go for it. You know, like we're experiencing AI maybe in our own garages and doing different things. What do you think about this in general? Is it true? Is it a good reading of what's happening? Should we go into like more commons-based, I don't know, open source model that could be tweaked, but, you know, having one main body of work, you know, for AI commons? I don't know. Just putting this out there. So if someone wants to get the question, it's not specific for any of you.
I want to hear Jess's answer to that.
Sure. And I also, if I can connect this, I saw a comment about like the ethical use of LLMs as well in the commons. I'm here thinking, not sure I have a like a great answer for this, but putting in context, I was like really active and like part of the free culture and free software movements in Brazil, specifically in South America, many years ago, like more years than I'd like to admit. And I see like so many people in this like virtual gathering were also part. I recognize like names, and I know like we all have like some experience and thoughts about that. And I find it really fascinating how the field shifts so much. And we can think about like the idea of even like copyright, you know, like the struggles that we have to make like access to knowledge, access to culture, like open data, things that were value and like part of the commons and that we were building together. And we see like their response, like institutional global response to some of those practices were at the time, and how we see same institutions, similar institutions responding to like big AI companies right now as like scraping the web. And I saw like all the like data sets like sucking up everything from the internet that one of the attendees mentioned over here. And it's really hard like not to compare those things, and how like also our notions of like even ownership and commons and shared perspectives, ethical perspectives, changing in all these times. And as I said, I tend to be more like the pessimistic side of this, or maybe like too realist, even though like I try to be hopeful. But I would say we sometimes need to say like no to AI or LLMs models, or like question like, is this the best option? Is this like the best tool for the task at hand? Like, do we really need this? And even think like from the like public policy perspective, and seeing like so many cities and so many countries adopting like certain infrastructure and technologies, like kind of like without questioning, is this like actually the best solution, or is like LLM or like putting AI broadly understood into certain systems the best we could do at this moment? And I would say like maybe part of our task here, and also like thinking about like all those years working with like this kind of idea of a commons, is like to say no. And I know like building our own tools, systems, infrastructure costs a lot of money, especially like civil society organizations. Universities are not necessarily like the best funded, or they are for the very like wrong kinds of research projects, let's say. And so I understand like all those dichotomies and how hard it is, and seeing the field shifting so much. And I know like this is not like a very decisive answer, but I would say like collectively we need to like say no more and trying to find the solution together. So I really appreciate this kind of space with people like from so many different areas, and seeing like the problems like kind of like consistent in different areas as well, and trying to think this together. So I'll pass this to whoever wants to chip in.
I'm happy to quickly, unless go ahead, B. Just quickly, thanks. I think when we are talking about AI systems, we also have to move beyond the abstract of what is an AI system, and that there's some common AI system, and ChatGPT is not all AI, and so on, right? We need to think about, if you have an AI system, normally what kind of tasks is it doing? It's doing classification, clustering, prediction broadly, right? And then, Lucas, the tasks are very specific, and they are specific to the context. So if you are I don't know, in the agriculture sector, and you are looking at your crop and you're trying to see whether the crop will there will be a pest attack or not, or what will be the crop yield, and to determine how much can you claim for insurance, or how much should be the premium of your insurance, or can you get a loan against your expected crop yield based on the images of the crop. That is very specific to the region and the place where the crop is growing and what kind of crop it is, and so on. So I don't see very clearly the comparison between like overall AI system, because there is no overall AI system. It is for specific things. You have to build AI systems to do specific tasks. For that, they need their own data sets, and for that, they need their own weights, they need their own code, and they need their own testing, and they need their own evaluation, and they need their own communities to inform and develop those systems. So I think that is good, because then you can actually build systems. If you are building an AI system in your garage to do something for you. I mean, yesterday I was talking to a colleague who built their own kind of AI system adapted from one of the large language models, of course, but to do a task that they wanted to do in terms of some kind of selections and so on. So I think people should have the freedom to use it the way for the tasks that are specific to them. And this overall idea of some global AI, I don't fully understand, like, because this is not how the technology is. It's not like the internet. The internet is a network. This is not a network. So I think we have to also separate some ideas from that parallel that we draw. Yeah, I'll stop here.
I would challenge that notion a little bit, actually. That AI doesn't benefit from the network effects. I think absolutely it does. And I like I said, I am not someone who's particularly concerned with pursuing artificial general intelligence. And at the same time, I think that there's a famous essay, The Bitter Lesson, I just dropped in the chat. We are seeing that sometimes more is more does seem to be working out, where systems seem more generalizable than we might have originally thought. I'm not. I would rather not. I would rather we have a bunch of purpose-built, specific, highly contextual models, and kind of treat AI capabilities almost like sensors that are out in the world. But I think that that isn't necessarily what we're finding, and so I think that we should remain open to the possibility that that it could be that more general systems might be more performant in some of those specific use cases. I think the jury is still out. I'm not necessarily voting in favor of that, but I think that it is not resolved, and I think that there are indications that that AI does benefit from these sort of quote unquote network effects of data and technology. And I think that speaks to why these conversations around what we want, and indeed Jess's challenge of what we don't want, is really relevant, because we are all kind of authors to these systems in a way. Caro talked about how journalists are navigating their relationship with these tools, and how conversations are often around deepfakes, but there's also a lot of conversations about how we put these tools to use. And one of the things that I've been certainly aware of over the last few years, learning from brilliant folks at Partnership on AI and others, is that our information ecosystems are much more fragile than I think many of us would have liked to believe. And one of the challenges in this is that these tools right now are being built, many of them are being built just drawing from our information commons as a resource to be extracted from. And I think that there are parts of this that are beautiful, right? We all get to be co-authors of these systems. We all get to be participants. We're democratizing the training of AI. And at the same time, we know that it's really crummy. We know that it's not great. We know that even resources like the Internet Archive have been slammed with web traffic from AI crawlers. And so I think that it is important that we both recognize that these network effects might genuinely exist, and that they come with a cost. One of the things that I've been lucky to get to work on with some folks as part of the Public AI Network. The Public AI Network is a community of people working to steer AI in a direction that is more publicly accessible, more publicly accountable, and ultimately protected from the enclosure of private interests. And one of the things that we've been thinking about deeply is this value of what is the value of the information that goes into these systems. And so we've been building, this is a very rough hewn prototype I'm going to share in the chat, more to come, but we've been building a resource for people to have a little bit more of an informed conversation about the costs and value of data that goes into training AI systems. Here we're largely talking about those large language models or big multi-purpose models. But I would love for us to be having a conversation as well around how we build the connective tissue such that, you know, to the point earlier, we can each in our garages be building these little models. I think that the future that I hope to see of AI with this kind of open knowledge frame is one in which we are able to have these big social conversations about how we want to be custodians of our information commons, while also creating the tools and resources where individual people and individual communities in their specific context can build little models, can build little things that work just for them, and don't have to generalize across everyone else.
Nice, thank you so much. Really good to have your both perspectives in this roundtable. I'm glad we got to a point that we could really build this together here. I wanna, if it's okay, get back to one thing that Caro talked in her speech, which was related to the tendency, the trend, right? Mainly around funding. I feel that just like, you know, the old ones in the room as I am, we saw like the internet coming, and then everything needs to be digital, right? Like you need to be in the internet, you need to have your website, blah blah, and then later you need to be in your phone. There's a smartphone, blah 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 blah, apps and so on. Like you need to have your app, blah blah, you know, and all these things went to the direction that now AI is the big thing. So everyone needs to go AI. If you're not doing AI, you're doing nothing, right? You're not maybe doing journalism, or you're not doing your work as a civil society, whatever. This is a feature of the capitalistic system, right? Like new is always better. Everyone aggregates around what's the novelty, the next edge of whatever technology, business, blah, blah, blah. I don't have any specific question, but the thing is like how to create an environment, maybe around our communities to, you know, ask if we really need AI sometimes, you know. In some of the solutions, that's something Jess just said as well, like the AI for the sake of the AI. And I think, I don't know, just want to put this topic there and to like how to combat this, how to really make people think that maybe it's worth still giving money to initiatives that are not related to AI. I'll leave you there.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that really goes to the question of what you're directing at, but I mean, you just asked the question, like, to what extent do we need AI? Maybe talking like from the standpoint of like a journalistic organization, or maybe just like publishing organizations in general. And also, I mean, obviously you won't find a paywall on Correctiv because we're not for-profit organization. What we want to do is like to spread information and facts. So, but maybe we can turn the question around and ask, like, to what extent does AI need us? And I think if I ask that as an individual organization, the question will probably be, okay, they'll be laughing at me. But I think what is important, before we have been talking about networks, what about if we create networks to see, because I mean, there are commercial models, not all of them, but there are many commercial models out there. We do not even know to what extent they use our data. And of course we could say, well, the more we publish, the more they use our data, maybe we're going to make the internet a better place. But if you think back when Google News was introduced, like publishers in Germany have made a big mistake in how they negotiated contracts with Google. Instead of forming an alliance and say like, okay, you use our content, so also reward us for this, or at least make us somewhat share like the benefits that you're making with our context that you're displaying on your platform. And I think we should have like the same, we should think back to the mistakes that we made in the past and now think about it when it comes to AI training. And I think what the fact-checking world is quite good, and I'm actually just coming back from Brazil. We had like the Global Fact Summit in Rio de Janeiro this year, where like the international fact-checking community unites once a year to exchange. Of course, like this year has been a bit gloomy, but I think what the fact-checking community is very good in, better than some other aspects in journalism, is actually to work together. Of course, there are aspects where we are also competitors in a positive way, but when it comes, for instance, to policy making, when it comes to discussing matters with big tech, I think we're very good in having like a shared point of view and uniting. And I think it's very important like that we build such networks with organizations with shared mutual interests, because even like in the fact-checking world, it's on a European level, it's the CSN and the IFCN on an international level. And I think it's important, like even as like these teams, like in the EFCSN on the European level, there are, I think, a bit more than 60 organizations. When we look at what is happening in Brussels, it's still a very small voice compared to big tech, but still I think it's important that we get together, and also what we can do, like bringing our data together, but because each of our organizations has, like, our data sets are so minor. But if we put all our data together, we can build meaningful data sets that can be leveraged then also by others, by researchers or whatever, like to build meaningful tools. So I think this network aspect is very important, especially when it comes to also negotiating with big tech.
Anyone wants to jump in and comment, like the funding trends or how to get away from it?
I'll speak briefly to build on that and to build on your initial provocation to us, which I think Prateek spoke to a little bit as well. But, you know, do we have to scrap it and start over, or can we work with the messy AI systems and communities that we have today? And one, I would say, you know, in the ethos of looking for the rebels in the Death Star, I think that we should recognize that across this ecosystem, there are lots of great efforts underway to try to improve the systems that we have. And I think that to your question around kind of the funding and the incentives in the space, I think that we should be a little bit more creative. You know, there's no way around it, right? Like dollars are dollars, money is money, you know, whatever it is. And at the same time, we know that we are not, as individuals working in civil society organizations, we are not primarily motivated by money, and neither are most people. In fact, I might even say everyone has motivations that are not money. And I think that if we want to steer the AI ecosystem that we have today, we need to make better use of those motivations. That's not to say that we shouldn't absolutely leverage the great work of philanthropy and building alternatives, that we shouldn't put pressure on investors and develop guidelines and norms and regulations for how governments invest in these systems. Absolutely, we should do those things. And I think that we can leverage more than that. And that's really what drives the ethos behind community-aligned AI benchmarks, is really saying, okay, you know, where I'm situated, I don't have the money to be able to change, you know, OpenAI's product strategy, but I might actually have the ability to, one, make it clear what good is. So give those rebels in the Death Star, give people who are out there who want to do good work, obvious examples of what they should work toward. And two, I can use the norms, frankly, of peer pressure, right, of our communities to actually encourage the behavior that we want to see. And I think that something that has shifted in my own activism over the last decade is a shift from focusing on the calling out negative behavior that I want to reduce. We still need that, obviously. But I think that we have over-indexed on that in many ways compared to celebrating the good behavior that we want to see. It's so difficult. There's a phrase, tall poppy syndrome, or the idea that, like, if you stick your head up, if you stand up to say something, if you stand out of the crowd, you're the one who gets cut down, right? You're the one who gets in trouble. And I think that that is often the case, where I've even seen it in the chat here a little bit. Organizations that try to do something kind of good often get more criticism than the orgs who don't try to do anything good at all, right? governments that try to do something kind of good often get more critique than governments that don't try to do anything good at all. And I think that that is creating a negative dynamic. And so one of the things that I think that we can be more creative about when we think about incentives, when we think about shifting behavior and norms, is how we can use celebration and positive visions and, you know, Jess maybe kicking and screaming hope, right? The things that your students have forced you to you know, reconcile with. That I think that we actually need those positive visions and affirmative views of what we want to see, not just the harms that we want to reduce. Absolutely, we should talk about that, but we also need the positives. And I honestly think that talking about what we want to see is way scarier and more vulnerable because our own civil society colleagues will often come and shoot us down for it. But I think we need that. And I think that that is one of the powerful tools at our disposal for changing the ecosystem that we have today, is actually hope and vision for what a better version of things could look like.
Maybe just like a quick suggestion that I'm stealing actually someone who had mentioned it, just like a comment in a random panel also in Brazil. They said like talking about a positive vision, which could also be, or which probably would be very much like a network task as well. I mean, if we don't come up with our own LLMs, why don't we come up as civil society organizations with our own benchmark, for instance? So I mean, if we have meaningful data sets, why not come up with a benchmark that is somewhat testing LLMs towards, I don't know, like from a fact checker's point of view, like towards like how fact checked you are, like I don't know, maybe this could be like an interesting vision as well, to have like alternative rating systems, so to say, for LLMs.
Well, thank you. In this very positive and optimistic note, I think we can close this panel. We are running ahead of time now, but somehow I was thinking we somehow could answer to this, like how to use AI without sending your soil data. There were many tips or many perspectives on how to do it, right? Like in the garage, spreads, there's no central tool, blah, blah, like many other ideas that circulated in this panel that I really want to thank you for your time, for being fully present and really doing a meaningful conversation around this hot take, as we started with, that is AI. I hope this also serves for you guys to connect with each other. This is one of the main things of this summit as well, like to put the community together and try to develop things from our contacts, because we are all in our small rooms doing stuff. Sometimes we don't have this space to share, and this is really great to have you guys here. And I hope you stay for the keynote that starts in 10 minutes, more or less. Thank you very much. We are doing a 10 minutes break now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.